Good morning. Let me hear you up yet. Good morning. There we go. We should all remember that the federal government did not create the states. The states created the federal government. These were the words spoken by our 40th president just after he took the oath of office some 35 years ago. You see, Ronald Reagan was right. Our founders intended for the federal government to have a limited role. They intended that the decisions in government overwhelmingly should be made at the state and at the local level, closest to the people. Well, for those of you who will be discussing over the next several days what's happening across this country, some of you might be confused and, dare I say, even some upset about what's happening in the presidential election. But I want to offer you some enthusiasm, some optimism today, and tell you no matter what's happening there, the conservative movement is alive and well in states all across America. Think about it. Since Barack Obama was elected, what a change we've had. Right after his taking office in 2009, there were 28 Democrat governors. Today, there are 18. In fact, Matt Bevin's election last fall is a prime example of how far conservatives have come over the past 7 years. Before his election last November, there were only 2 Republicans who'd been elected governor in the Commonwealth of Kentucky since World War II. Today, Matt is one of 31 Republican governors in office all across this great country. And you know, we have a chance this fall to grow that number, but first, we need to protect some of our great conservatives. People like Mike Pence, who's up this fall in Indiana, or Pat McCrory in North Carolina. And then after we elect our conservatives along the way, we can help grow the numbers by expanding with opportunities and open seats in places like West Virginia and Missouri. In fact, we have a real shot in New Hampshire and even in Montana. But get this, we actually have an opportunity to elect a Republican governor in the home state of Bernie Sanders. That's right. In Vermont, where I guess just about everybody looks like a conservative compared to Bernie, right? But the reason why we see that kind of change is because Americans are looking for leadership to counter the failed policies of Barack Obama. Since 2009, talk about great recruitment. It's about the only nice thing I can say about this president is he's been an incredible recruiter for conservative candidates. Since 2009, there have been almost 1,000 new Republicans elected in the state legislatures all across this country. That's a remarkable turnaround. When the president first took office, there were 27 state legislatures that were controlled entirely by Democrats and 8 that were split. Today, there's just 11. Just 11 are controlled by Democrats and 8 that are split. Why? Because our policies are working. I mean, think about it across the country. In Indiana, Mike Pence been in office, and you see they've got the lowest unemployment rate since March of 2011, and they've got one of the largest voucher programs in the entire country. In North Carolina, where Pat McCrory's governor, they've got a state where they not only have a surplus, they got a surplus on top of the fact that he had to pay down a $2.5 billion debt owed to the federal government that he inherited from his predecessor because of payments for unemployment insurance. You look elsewhere as well. In New Mexico, Susana Martinez has cut in half the business tax on the employers in that state. You look in South Carolina, because of Nikki Haley's policies, there's some nearly 30,000 people who were once on welfare who are now working today. In Tennessee, with Bill Haslam in the legislature, they've cut taxes twice as much in 5 years as anyone had in 8 years before that. There's a real change out there. And best of all, right here in Maryland, because of Larry Hogan, a Republican governor in Maryland, You now have a state budget because of Larry that was adopted that for the first time in 9 years does not include one single tax increase, or as you all call it in Maryland, an O'Malley, right? Not one. Not one. And what that shows is with each of those examples, it shows us that good policy is good politics. You see, a couple years ago, before the 2014 elections, the AFL-CIO nationally transferred $300 million from their federal accounts into the states, in states like Florida and Michigan and Wisconsin. They went after the governors in those states. And you know what? We won. We won every one of those elections. In fact, we not only won in those 3 states, 16 members of the class of 2010 were reelected. I like to tell my friend Paul Ryan, who grew up down the road from me, that for he and the others in his conference and those in the Senate now, they owe their majorities to us in the states because we sucked up all the union money in America. I'm only half joking about that, by the way, and I think I got most of it in my state. But you think about the difference it made in my state, it made a tremendous difference. In Wisconsin in 2010, we won an election that people said we couldn't win. And then we won again in 12 and again in 14. And thanks, by the way, because many of you here and across the country helped us, particularly in that recall election in 2012. We won each of those 3 elections in a state that hadn't gone Republican for president since Ronald Reagan was last on the ballot in 1984. We won not because we ran to the middle, but rather because we laid out a clear, common sense, conservative plan to tackle the economic and fiscal crises that our state faced. And then we did something unusual in politics. We actually did it. We actually did it. We implemented it. And guess what? It works. It works. Just last week, the U.S. Department of Labor put out a report that showed that there are just 10 states in America that have a better unemployment rate, meaning a lower average annual unemployment rate last year than those states did before the recession in 2007. I'm proud to say that my state, Wisconsin, is one of those 10. In fact, our unemployment rate in Wisconsin over the last couple of months has been so low, it's the lowest it's been in 15 years. Now, that may not sound like a long time ago, but my sons, like a lot of the students here, my sons are in college. Matt and Alex are 20 and 21. The last time the unemployment rate was that low in my state, Matt and Alex were 5 and 6 years old. That's a lifetime ago for a lot of our college students here. And it's not just unemployment down. You all have been following it nationally. Unemployment, thankfully, has creeped down a little bit. But one of the biggest challenges is that our labor force participation rate, that's the percentage of people actually in the workforce, is still hovering just over 62% nationally. That's about where it was in the 70s. In Wisconsin, I'm proud to say that we have over 2/3 of our people working. 68% of the population is working, even though we've got one of the lowest unemployment rates we've had in a decade and a half. That's real progress. In fact, despite what some of the media say in my home state, I love to point out that last year we had one of the largest number of people working, of actual people working in our state that we've had in nearly our entire history. So what it shows is that reforms, conservative, positive reforms actually work. But how did we do it? Well, we did it simply like other states are doing it. We got government out of the way. Property and income taxes today are actually lower, not lower rates, but actually lower on a median valued home on property and lowered for an average taxpayer, are lower today than they were in 2010 before we took office. We reined in out-of-control regulations and frivolous lawsuits. We strengthened our worker training programs and our technical colleges. We froze tuition. We froze tuition for 4 years in a row. I love all this talk nationally about refinancing student loan debt. How about just make it lower cost in the first place so we don't acquire so much debt? I think for some in Washington that would just be too logical. But we did all those things and it helped grow the economy. But we did more than that. In our state, a blue state like other blue states across this country, we actually made Wisconsin the 25th state in the country where we give workers the freedom to choose through right to work. In our state, a blue state, we defunded Planned Parenthood once and for all. In our state, a blue state, we passed concealed carry and castle doctrine to protect the Second Amendment rights of our citizens. And I'm proud to say that we now require a photo ID to vote in the state of Wisconsin. So you look at all those things, and it reminds me, though, that good politics is good policy is good politics, because we won those elections, and we're going to continue to win elections like that. And it's not just in Wisconsin, but we see positive reforms all across this great country. But I just want to remind you that no matter what you think about what's happening in the presidential election, you can't give up. We need your help in the states. We're depending on you at the state and at the local level. It's what our American revival is all about. We're trying to take America back one state, one community, one person at a time. And that's why we need your help now more than ever. You see, this fall, in at least 5 states, maybe more, at least 5 states, we have the opportunity to elect Republican governors in states that currently have Democrats today. That alone is worth a tremendous difference out there. But we need people at the grassroots knocking on doors, making phone calls, reaching out and sharing that message. An optimistic, positive message for our country and our states and our communities, because that's what we stand for as conservatives. Think about it. It's not just about winning elections. You know, governors and conservative lawmakers are pushing positive reforms all across this great country. And we're not just winning elections, we're making a difference. Think about that. Cutting taxes, defunding Planned Parenthood, passing major welfare reform, education reform, right to work, school choice, protecting religious liberties. None of those things are happening today up in our nation's capital, but they're happening in state capitals all across America. They're happening because our ideas work if given a chance, even in blue states like Wisconsin. They're happening because conservative ideas work. Think about it. I was just on campus a couple of weeks ago at the University of Wisconsin where, there you go, where my youngest son's at, which is why I particularly like our tuition freeze. But I was there on campus and I thought, okay, you know, Madison's a little like Berkeley, a little, you know, we always call it a sea of sanity. It surrounds Madison because it's been so liberal for so long, but there were hundreds and hundreds of college students at the college Republican meeting there, not just because we froze tuition, but because I think young people, young voters in particular, are yearning for a difference, for a positive difference between what the left, what Barack Obama and others have offered us here in our nation's capital, and so many others in the past like them have offered in our states and our cities across America. And I think there's a clear difference that I explained to the students then, and I'll end with you here today. You see, liberals believe in a top-down approach. They think that Washington knows best. They believe in a top-down approach that tells you what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. As conservatives, we believe in just the opposite. We believe you build the economy and society from the ground up in a way that's new and fresh, organic and dynamic. We believe that as long as you don't hurt the health and safety of your neighbor, you should be able to go out and start your own career, build your own business, live your own life. They believe in the government. We believe in the individual. We believe in you. And that's really what's at stake, not just in the presidential election, not just in the House and the Senate, but in states and communities all across this great country. We are making a difference. We are connecting the dots. We are showing people all across this country what it means to have a positive, conservative plan to take back our states, to take back our communities, and take back our country. Today, I would implore upon each and every one of you, Obviously, you're here because you care. But to go back home and carry that message. You know, sometimes people would say sharing a message like this is a little bit like preaching to the choir, right? A little bit like preaching to the choir. Well, my dad, some of you know, long time retired, but my dad was a pastor in a small town in south central Wisconsin. And I remember he told me the story of years ago, somebody said to another pastor, a friend of his, preacher, you're preaching to the choir. And he said, well, I preach to the choir because I want the choir to sing, right? So today I would leave you with this. I'm preaching to the choir because you know that positive, common sense, conservative reforms work on economic policy, they work on fiscal policy, they work on social policy, but we can't be satisfied just sharing that message in safe confines like this here today. We can't just do it back at meetings of this group or that group or the party or other places like that. We've got to go out and we've got to go back home and we've got to go and share it in our states, in our communities, in our homes, at work, at school, at play, wherever we might be. We can't be afraid to share that message. But as Ronald Reagan once said, we need to be happy warriors. We need to share that message in a way that says, this is what we're for. And here are the examples all across America where it's working. Don't be afraid to share that message. I'm convinced that if we sing and share that message all across this great country, we will take America back one state, one community, one vote at a time. With your help, that's exactly what we're going to do. Go forth and sing. God bless you.